Benghazi is a classic case of red news, blue news. Fox News presents the president's handling of the Benghazi tragedy as a scandal, while left-leaning MSNBC pretty much dismisses it. One story has become two different stories on the right and on the left. So the questions for us today is there a real scandal, and is the press paying enough attention? It was September 11, 2012, when 4 Americans were killed in Benghazi, Libya, and what we now know was a terrorist attack. On the right, including on Fox, there's been lots of talk of a cover-up to protect the president. This week, there was a new development, an email obtained through a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit written by Ben Rhodes, a deputy national security advisor. Included on the email, some top White House officials. I'll get to that, but first, the blue in Red News, Blue News. On MSNBC, Alex Wagner openly mocked the idea of a cover-up.
If you hear it from a Benghazi truther, the smoking gun has been found. Not only was a senior White House official apparently following CIA guidance, he was also trying to manage political fallout before the 2012 elections. As Dave Weigel points out in Slate, this is a major departure from most crises when administrations try to broadcast fear and panic. Dave Weigel is, of course, being sarcastic. But sarcasm and apparently a sense of reason or proportion, all those things seem to have been lost on conspiracy-obsessed conservatives who have turned this email into the Watergate tapes.
Now, cue Bill O'Reilly, who was furious that the new email didn't get more media attention right away.
That's a scandal. A scandal. That is proof the American press is dishonest. Period. They're covering up a cover-up, as Krauthammer put it, which might lead directly to the President of the United States. And that failure by the national press to tell the American people the truth about Benghazi is for one reason and one reason only: to protect President Barack Obama.
So this morning, I've put together a blue ribbon panel of reporters to get at the truth of this, including Carl Bernstein of Watergate fame. But first, here in studio, CNN chief congressional correspondent Dana Bash and Politico magazine senior staff writer Glenn Thrush. Let's start with the email that's being called a smoking gun. What does the email actually mean?
It depends who you ask. Obviously, Republicans are calling it a smoking gun because they believe that this is proof of what they have been arguing for a very long time, which is that there was a political dynamic here and a political imperative here inside the White House to not call this a terrorist attack because it was just 6-7 weeks before the election and the president was running on somebody who killed Osama bin Laden. So this would have hurt that political narrative. But it's not just the content, it's also the fact that we haven't seen it. And it wasn't part of the batch of documents that the White House gave up when they were subpoenaed.
I was talking to a former National Security Council official yesterday, and he said it was just nuts that this wasn't part of the document dump that we saw in May. We sat there for 2 hours in the Roosevelt Room of the White House with senior administration officials who ensured us that this was it. We were going to see every single email. And in fact, this thing shows up, and it is not, by the way, in terms of its substance, I think we can agree, it is not a smoking gun. It is more along the lines of just another piece of information in a larger case.
But it was in their interest in May to get everything out, wasn't it? That's
it was.
Strange about this.
Well, it was at the time, but you have to wonder. I think that the hidden story here it obviously has a lot to do with politics, but it has a lot more to do with the competing interests of the CIA, the State Department, and the White House.
And you saw that Jay Carney at the White House was, first of all, trying to say that the reason it wasn't given over was because it wasn't specifically about Benghazi. It was more of a regional
about the region-wide
discussion, which nobody in that White House briefing room bought at all.
Right.
It was pretty spirited.
For me, as a reporter who covers the White House, the fascinating stuff isn't the conspiracy theory stuff. It's just watching all these different players go at each other with knives.
Where does this story go from here? A story that is daily on Fox News, but rarely covered as extensely elsewhere.
Yes, I've noticed that. I've noticed a lot of frustration on my Twitter feed from a lot of conservatives out there saying, why are whenever story I do, okay, this is great, but why aren't you doing Benghazi? This is fascinating to me because Fox is doing it extensively. And if you talk to Republicans, as I do on Capitol Hill, particularly those who are up for re-election, maybe even those who have primary challenges, who are really trying to make sure that the base is with them, the Republican base is with them, this is a huge issue. So the question that I have, and I don't know if anybody can really answer it's a chicken or the egg question, is Fox doing it because the Republican base, their viewership, is interested, or is the base interested because Fox is doing it all the time?
I see the same stuff on the Twitter feed. I get emails from my friends on the right who say, why aren't you covering this more extensively? It is an important story to cover, but from my perception, as someone who covers the White House, it's important in terms of diplomatic security moving forward, our role in the world, and this conflagration in the Mideast that we still haven't dealt with. So I think, to a certain extent, having this so politicized robs us of the ability to discuss what the real policy implications
Because
are.
it gets called a Fox story.
Exactly.
Other people can more easily dismiss it.
Exactly. Just for example, at the end of the week, there was testimony in front of Darrell Iss's committee. He's obviously been one of the leaders in trying to investigate this from a retired general who was the first military person who was in the region on the ground at the time to testify before Congress. He argued that the military should have done more, could have done more, and that the reason they didn't is because there was a cultural deference to the State Department. You know what? Whether or not that's true, there was certainly a divide politically, but it should be something that the government, that we should be interested in looking into. Is there a problem with just basic bureaucracy and bureaucratic problems that could perhaps hinder trying to go help 4 Americans and more Americans, 4 Americans died, but more who are under attack in a post that they were sent to by this government.
Now, if I were on the right, I'd be angry at Darrell Issa, who is the head of the Investigations Committee, because he drew all of these conclusions at the beginning of the investigation. If he had brought reporters along step by step by step, without making the broadest accusations at the very beginning of his inquiry, I think you would see a level of interest in the story in the mainstream media that you don't see. So I think, to a certain extent, the hyperbole up front has really harmed it as an issue which would have otherwise taken root in the wider community.
I think people are wondering this week, is Fox, this has been targeted as a Fox story. MSNBC has been dismissing this story. We've seen that on left-wing blogs as well, referring to Benghazi truthers in a negative way. I wonder if that may come back to hurt some of these folks that have dismissed this story entirely.
It's like, I'm just getting a little tired of watching the base talk to itself. It's like, I think our function here is to move beyond this, move beyond this partisan, I wouldn't say shilling, because I think there are fine journalists at all these places that we're talking about. But I think in general, it's just becoming noise. And frankly, I wonder how productive it is. The Fox folks are watching Fox. The MSNBC people are watching MSNBC. I don't know who else.
Tune into CNN.
Right, tune into CNN.
Well,
I don't know who they're
middle.
selling here, right? No, it doesn't seem like either argument is selling the larger group of people who either aren't tuned into this or haven't, don't care very much about it as a central issue.
Ultimately, isn't this the center of attention because of the woman on the screen behind us, Hillary Clinton?
Who?
Of course.
Ken Rhodes?
And I really do think that you're absolutely right. It is a legitimate story on its substance. But it does, you're right as well, that it does get caught in the politics. And the politics of this is about the base now and whether there's a cover-up, but it's also looking ahead to 2016 and Republicans having their eye on somebody who they're worried is really unbeatable, and that's Hillary Clinton. And her Achilles heel, as far as they're concerned, is what happened in the State Department, the fact that she was the Secretary of State at a time that one of her ambassadors died, the first time that's happened in 33 years, and trying to pin her with this. And they have that now infamous soundbite from her, which I guarantee you we're going to see in ads over and over if she does run, saying something along the lines of, what difference does it make, which they'll probably take out of context. But the bottom line is that you're right. Hillary Clinton, what was the Secretary of State at the time, she's the big political target for Republicans, and those two are absolutely related.
Dana Bash, Glenn Thrush, thank you both for joining me.